Hello and welcome to this third lesson in the Introduction to Python unit of work. A quick revision task to start with from lesson 1. You can either open up your work from lesson 1 or you can start a fresh file. It doesn't massively matter. But I'd like you to get your chatbot to ask whether the person is feeling okay and save that response as feeling. Now, if you can't remember back to lesson 1, the code at the bottom might help you. We've got print, what is your name, and then name equals input. You should better use that to create something that asks, are you feeling okay? Then the person should better reply yes or no into a variable called feeling. Pause the video at this point and have a go at that activity. So as I said, this is the third lesson in the Algorithms and Programming or Introduction to Python unit of work. This is lesson 3, and within this lesson we're going to be looking at selection. Within this lesson we're going to understand what an if-else statement is and consider how they might be useful to make our chatbot more lifelike. We're going to understand how to program those within Python, and then we're going to understand how to add an elif part to our code to expand our code up so we can use more complex answers. Now, don't worry at the moment if those things don't make too much sense. Hopefully by the end of the lesson they will. Here is the code that I hope you created as part of the do now task at the start. We should have something along the lines of print, are you okay today? And then feeling equals input. Now your code would work if we had name equals input, but that doesn't really make sense because we're not asking the person's name. So print, are you okay today? Feeling equals input. Hopefully your code looks something like that. If it doesn't, pause the video at this point and update the code you've got so far. I'd like you to pause the video at this point and have a think about the following diagram. We've got a block that says condition, and if condition is true goes down one route, and if condition is false goes down another route. What might this mean, particularly in regards to our are you feeling okay question from the start activity, where the person would either reply yes or no. Pause the video at this point and have a think around what that might do. So we use an if statement in Python to allow us to respond to a number of different options. If the person said yes, they are feeling okay, do something. If they didn't say yes, we want to do something else. Whenever we do that, we start by writing the word if. That means, if something happened, do this. If something else happened, do this. We're comparing two things, so we use two equals signs. So if feeling equals yes, feeling being our variable and yes being what we want to check. Did they say yes? If they did, we want to print, oh, I'm glad. Now the indentation there is really important. The indentation isn't just to make it look nice. The indenting has to be there and it has to be correct. So we use the tab button or the arrow pointing inwards on the top left hand side of our keyboard to indent. If you put the colon properly at the end of the first line, Python will indent for you. The else section of codes means, well, what do we want to happen if they said anything other than yes? Now, I know at the moment that's not perfect. They might have said yeah with an H and this code wouldn't work. It would still say oh poor you, but we will come on to that later on. But if they said yes, do something. If they said anything else, we want to print oh poor you. And again, the indentation on that line is really important. So our finished if statement might look something like this. I'm going to stop the video now and I'm going to move online and we'll have a look at programming one of these in Python Online. Back in Python Online using the website from last week, and I'll post that in the comments section below. We can hopefully remember that to put a basic print statement with a question, we use the print command, which will go blue if we write that correctly. And we can ask the question then in speech marks. So I've got 2 brackets, 2 speech marks, and those things always come in pairs. So print, are you feeling okay? I could then write feeling equals input, which would allow me to run my program. If I click the run button over the side here, are you feeling okay? And I can then respond back with yes. Now I can put as many of those sorts of statements in as I like. Print, do you like dogs, for example. And I wouldn't then put feeling equals input, I'd put something like dog equals input. And if I run that again, it's going to ask me both questions. So, are you feeling okay? Yes. Do you like dogs? No. And I can answer them like that. Now, we're going to think specifically about our if statement that we looked at in the previous slide. I'm going to write if feeling equals equals. Now, we're putting two equals because we're comparing something. I need to write the response in speech marks, and it should go red. So if feeling equals equals yes, and then my colon. Now you'll notice that it indents automatically as long as I put my colon in place. So I'm then going to put print that is good. The mistake would then be to write my else part here. That doesn't line up. The if and the else have always got to line up going down the page. So I'm manually going to bump my else statement back by 1. Because I put my colon, my print statement's automatically indenting, which is exactly what we want, and I can print oh no. Now your layout must be like that. If you end up with something like that, it's not going to work. Your indentation isn't right. If you end up with that, it's not going to work. The if and the else must be in line. The print and the print must be in line. If I run that, are you feeling okay? Yes. It said that is good. Do you like dogs? No. If I run it this time, however, and I reply yes with a little y, it says oh no. It's only going to work if I give exactly that response. Now, as a bit of an extension, you can say or feeling equals equals and then write yes a different way, for example with a little y. And you can do that as many times as you like. You could put or feeling equals equals yeah. Now you can put as many of those in as you like, but you don't need to, certainly for this first part. That's the sort of thing we're looking for. Now if I wanted to use that again for dogs, I'd put the exact same code but replace feeling with dog. That is good doesn't make much sense, so I might put oh me too. And then if they say they don't like dogs, the computer's going to say, oh, I do. Okay, going to move back to the presentation now and have a bit of a look at the activity that you can undertake, but do flick back to this code as an example of one that definitely will work for our if statements. So now you've seen me give a couple of examples, I'd like you to pause the video and add into your feeling code something that happens only if the person said yes, and then something that happens if they said no. So after your chatbot asks if you're okay today, program an if statement so that the chatbot replies with something good if they said yes. Once you've got that working, add an else part so that the chatbot feels sorry for you if you say no. Pause the video at this point and see if you can get your code working. So pause the video at this point and have a think around what sorts of questions we could use an if-else loop for to make our chatbot appear even more lifelike. In short, we should better do any question where there's only two options, yes or no, right or left, up or down. Have a think around some other questions you might be able to add. So I'd now like you to pause the video and add in a couple more questions. So we've got probably what is your name, and then we've got are you feeling okay. I might add in something like do you like pizza and are dogs your favourite animal, or 2 or 3 questions along those lines. So pause the video and see if you can get 2 or 3 different questions in a row where if I say yes I get certain responses, but if I say no I get different responses again. So those bits of code work really well for questions where there's 2 options, yes or no, right or left, up or down. If up, do this, else, do something else. But it doesn't work so well for more open-ended questions. So on the example on the board, I've got print what is your favourite animal, animal equals input. Now I can't really just say if you like cats, do something, and if you like any other animal in the world, do something else, because that doesn't really make much sense. So if we look at the code on the board, we've got more than one option. If animal equals cat, print oh cats are too clingy. Elif. Elif means else if, and that allows us to add an unlimited number of options in the middle of our code. So I've got elif animal equals dog, print old dogs are too big. And then another elif, elif animal equals snake, oh poor you, because I don't like snakes very much. Now you can add as many of those elif statements as you like. You could put 100 of those in a row if you had the time. The only important thing is that our indentation is always correct. The if and the elifs should always line up going down the page, and all of our prints should line up going down the page. They shouldn't go in a diagonal, getting further and further away from the edge. Right at the bottom of our code, we've got an else. Now that means if it's none of the options above, print something like, oh, I've never heard of that. And that means that the computer hasn't been programmed yet to deal with that response. I'm going to move online now, and we'll have a go at programming a couple of these within Python as an example. So we're now ready to look at our more complex if statements. I've got my question, what is your favourite animal? Animal equals input. However, if I put my first part, if animal equals, and then in speech marks cat, it's quite limiting. I'm assuming that everyone is going to say cat. So I need to add in some more options. So I'm going to say, oh, me too there. But my next line of code is going to be different. I'm then going to add in my elif. Now my elif means else if, and it should go blue. If you mistype it like I did there, it goes black. That's clearly wrong. So elif animal equals, and I'm going to go for something different this time and put cow. Slightly odd favourite animal, but hey. And this person's going to say cows are dirty. And I can put as many of those elifs as you like. You can say elif, animal equals something else, and then another one. You can put as many of those elifs as you want going down the page. Now our last one is always else. It doesn't matter how many of these elifs you put, your last one is always else. And that means it's just one that they've never heard of before, or one that we've not yet programmed the computer to understand. Now that is how our elif should, or our if statement should look. Except I've clearly on line 17 got a bit underlined in red. Now that suggests I've done some of my code wrong. If I look at my previous line, I always use 2 equal symbols when writing my code. So I need to add in my second equals there. Now if you run that code, that will give you whichever response you reply with. If you write cat with a little c, it's going to jump down to here because it doesn't know cat with a little c. Just as we did before, you can add in something like this if you like to give different versions of that word spelt in different ways or with different uses of capital letters. So as a final challenge, I'd like you to pause the video at this point and I'd like you to program your chatbot so that it asks a question with multiple answers and then allows the response to be quite personalized by using a number of if, elif and else statements so that the chatbot gives quite personalized responses. Remember, your last response should be else, and that will be if the computer doesn't know that thing. Now, feel free to pause the video at this point and have a look back at the previous slide that shows you a fairly solid example around how that should work. This is a final challenge, so pause and have sort of 15 minutes or so to try and get to a point where your program asks at least one of those questions with the more complex answers. Hopefully then we now understand what an if-else statement is and how they can be used. They can be used to help make our chatbot more lifelike by giving lots of different responses to different people. Hopefully we know how to program one within Python, and it would be brilliant if we all understood the bottom task as well, which is how we can use an elif statement to add more options into our if statement. If you did the previous task, then you should be able to tick off those 3 objectives as being fully met. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions, please do post those either onto Google Classroom or in the comments section below.